Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we're looking at something that, well, it really challenges how we think about a normal day in a K-12 classroom.
Glad to be here. And yeah, it really does.
Okay.
We're unpacking a highly detailed brief today about a mental health support system down in Georgia called MentalSpace School.
Right, and just to set the stage for you listening,
Yeah.
imagine a teenager having a severe panic attack right in the middle of, like, third period biology.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a tough situation.
It is. They're totally shutting down, just completely overwhelmed. And in a traditional school setting, what happens next?
Well, usually it's a pass to the counselor's office, if they're lucky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A hall pass, maybe a really frantic phone call to the parents, and then the student gets handed a referral to a community clinic?
Right, which means they are immediately placed on, what, a 6-week wait list?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
Just to get a basic intake appointment. So the academic day is totally ruined. Parents have to leave work. And this is the kicker. The immediate crisis isn't actually resolved.
No, it's just delayed. And that delay, frankly, is the baseline reality for millions of families right now.
It's awful.
Navigating community mental health resources while simultaneously trying to keep your kid from falling behind in math or reading mathel. I mean, it's a bureaucratic nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
You have the educational system running on one track and the medical system running on a completely different track. And families are just left standing there trying to build a bridge between the two.
While their child is actively in distress. Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We aren't just here to talk about one specific company.
Right. Yeah.
We're using this brief about MentalSpace School as a lens to examine a massive paradigm shift. Because in just a few short paragraphs, this source shows what it actually takes to treat student mental health, not as some medical add-on, but as core educational infrastructure.
And what's fascinating here is how this single source proposes a really comprehensive, unified solution to a deeply fragmented problem.
Yeah, it hits it from all sides.
It does.
Yeah.
Historically, interventions only offer one piece of the puzzle, like a school might hire one extra counselor, or a district hands out a suicide hotline number.
A Band-Aid, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this brief outlines a model that attacks the clinical access, the financial barriers, and the administrative red tape all at the exact same time.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to look at how they actually execute that clinical access first. The brief highlights this model of same-day teletherapy coupled with dedicated therapist teams per school.
Yeah, that's a crucial combination.
But I have to be honest, when I read teletherapy for a teenager in the middle of a crisis, my immediate reaction is just, I don't know, skepticism.
Sure, that makes sense.
Because standard telehealth usually feels like calling a random IT help desk. You log on, you get whatever provider happens to be free, and it is entirely transactional.
That transactional nature is exactly the flaw of standard urgent care models. Whether it's physical or digital, you are basically trading consistency for speed. If you want to see someone today, you're going to see a total stranger.
Right. And if you want to see the therapist who actually knows your history.
You're going to wait a month.
Yeah.
But what this model does is embed a specific, dedicated clinical team to a specific school building. So while the delivery is digital, the personnel are not random at all.
So they become, like, part of the school's virtual faculty?
Exactly. They learn the culture of that specific hallway. They know who the principal is. They understand the local community dynamics.
Okay, I get the structural advantage of a dedicated team. That makes sense. But I still want to push back on the medium itself.
Okay, go for it.
We're talking about K-12 students here.
Yeah.
Kids and teenagers are notoriously difficult to engage, even when you are sitting in the exact same physical room as them.
Oh, for sure.
So how does putting a screen between a completely shut down teenager and a therapist actually work during a real-time crisis?
Well, that is the exact friction point that derails most digital health initiatives for youth right there.
Yeah.
But the text provides the mechanism for how they bridge that digital gap.
What's the mechanism?
It specifically mandates that these dedicated teams are made up of licensed diverse therapists who are culturally competent.
Okay, I hear phrases like cultural competence all the time. But frankly, it usually just sounds like a corporate HR buzzword.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It gets thrown around a lot.
Right. So how does a therapist sharing a demographic background actually penetrate a teenager's digital wall?
So in a clinical setting, especially during a crisis, cultural competence isn't a buzzword. It is a psychological mechanism for rapid trust building.
Interesting. How so?
Think about it. When a teenager's having that panic attack in third period, Their cognitive load is completely maxed out. They are in survival mode.
Right, they can barely process what's happening.
Exactly. They don't have the emotional bandwidth to sit there and explain their family dynamics, their neighborhood stressors, or their cultural background to a therapist who doesn't implicitly understand those realities.
Ah, I see. So it essentially bypasses the whole explaining myself phase of therapy.
Precisely. If the person on the screen speaks their family's language, either literally or figuratively, and reflects their lived experience, the student doesn't have to spend the first 3 sessions just translating their world.
They just get it.
Yes, that implicit understanding creates an immediate therapeutic alliance. The screen essentially disappears because the empathy is instant. And the speed of that connection is what de-escalates the immediate crisis.
Wow. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It heavily reduces the friction of communication.
It really does.
But let's say they build that trust. The student gets the same-day intervention. The crisis is de-escalated. They learn a great coping mechanism. If we stop there, we still have a major problem.
Right, because the environment hasn't changed.
Exactly. And the brief doesn't stop at individual student therapy. It outlines an entire ecosystem of care. It explicitly lists crisis intervention, suicide and violence prevention, staff wellness, and family counseling.
Yeah, the scope is pretty massive.
And that staff wellness inclusion right next to suicide prevention really jumped out at me.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we see true systems thinking in action. Why do you think staff wellness is categorized right alongside something like suicide prevention?
Well, it makes me think of like a fishbowl analogy.
Okay, I like that. Let's hear it.
It's like trying to cure a sick fish without cleaning the toxic water in the bowl. You can give the fish all the cutting-edge medicine in the world, and you can give the student the best same-day therapy.
But the water is still toxic.
Right. The second you put that kid back into a classroom led by a teacher who is experiencing profound, untreated burnout, the student just gets sick again.
That is a perfect visualization of environmental trauma. I mean, a child is basically an emotional sponge. They absorb the stress of the adults around them.
Constantly.
And in modern education, teachers are acting as secondary trauma sponges. They are absorbing the behavioral issues, the anxieties, the crises of 30 students at a time.
And often without any clinical support for themselves.
Exactly. Which means treating the teacher is actually a prerequisite to treating the student.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is an environmental intervention. You cannot stabilize a child if the structural pillars of their life, their teachers, and their parents are collapsing under stress.
So it's not just the kid on the couch, so to speak.
No, by providing staff wellness and family counseling, MentalSpace School is recognizing that the patient isn't just the individual student. The patient is the entire school community.
But, treating an entire school community brings up a massive, glaring reality check. Money. Because an incredible ecosystem of care with dedicated teams and rapid telehealth and family counseling is entirely useless if families are locked out by cost.
Oh, absolutely. It's the biggest barrier.
And the brief hits this head-on with their mission statement. No family should have to choose between paying bills and getting their child mental health support.
It's a great mission statement.
It is. But mission statements are easy to write. How do they actually execute that financially?
Honestly, the execution is the most disruptive part of this source material. They list their accepted insurances, and it is an incredibly broad spectrum.
I saw that list. It's huge.
Yeah, you have major commercial players like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, and Humana.
The big guys.
The big corporate plans, right. But crucially, sitting right next to those premium plans is Medicaid, offered at $0 out of pocket, along with state-managed plans like Peach State, CareSource, and Amerigroup.
It's like they built a universal adapter for healthcare billing, which is almost unheard of in therapy.
It really is rare.
Usually a private therapy practice caters strictly to commercial insurance because, well, the reimbursement rates are higher and the paperwork is easier.
Right, and they might take a few Medicaid patients as a courtesy, if at all.
Exactly. Or, conversely, you have a community clinic that relies entirely on Medicaid, but struggles to attract the commercial insurance families. So how does a single provider financially survive, casting a net that catches both ends of the spectrum?
They survive through the scale of the school district and the efficiency of the telehealth model.
Oh, because they don't have the physical overhead.
Yes. By removing the overhead of a brick-and-mortar clinic, the waiting rooms, the front desk staff, the expensive commercial real estate, they save a fortune.
That makes sense.
And by consolidating the administrative billing process on the back end, they can actually afford to absorb the lower reimbursement rates of Medicaid. They make up for the margin through the sheer volume of district-wide integration.
Wow. And the socioeconomic equalizer that creates in the school hallway is just wild to think about.
What do you mean?
Well, you have a student whose parents work at a Fortune 500 company with premium Cigna coverage, right? Sitting at a desk right next to a student whose family is living on the margins and relies on Medicaid.
And when a mental health crisis hits, the care they both receive is completely identical.
Exactly. The student on the $0 Medicaid plan isn't sent to an underfunded community clinic across town. They get the exact same-day access, the same culturally competent therapist, and the same family support.
As the student with the premium commercial plan, it really levels the playing field.
And that details $0 out of pocket for Medicaid is the ultimate removal of friction. Because for a family already stressed about paying rent, even a $15 copay can be the barrier that prevents a child from getting suicide prevention support.
It's sad, but it's very true. If it's $0, that barrier just evaporates.
But of course, bringing that level of complex medical billing and clinical care directly into a public school building introduces a completely different type of barrier.
A legal one.
Right, the administrative minefield. Because schools and hospitals operate under completely different legal frameworks, the brief explicitly states that this system is HIPAA and FERPA compliant.
Which is the exact administrative shield school districts desperately need if they're going to host healthcare services.
Okay, for those of you listening who aren't swimming in compliance acronyms all day, let's break down why that clash is so toxic. IPAA is strict medical privacy law, and FERPA is strict educational privacy law.
Right.
So imagine a school counselor who is bound by educational law and a clinical therapist who is bound by medical law trying to collaborate on a student who is, say, self-harming.
The collaboration usually just hits a brick wall. The teacher or school counselor might identify the self-harm and refer the student.
But then what happens?
Once that student is in the medical system under HIPAA, the clinical therapist often cannot legally tell the school anything about the treatment plan or the diagnosis.
Sometimes they can't even tell them if the student attended the session.
Exactly. Not without jumping through massive legal hoops.
But the teacher is the one who has to sit in the room with the student for 7 hours a day. They need to know if the student is safe or what triggers to avoid.
And that is exactly the problem. School administrators are terrified of violating FERPA by sharing too much educational data, and medical providers are terrified of violating HIPAA by sharing health data.
It's like trying to satisfy the security requirements of both a hospital and the Pentagon at the same time.
Pretty much. It creates a massive liability silo. But by utilizing a software and operational model that is pre-engineered to be dual compliant, meaning it legally satisfies both the Department of Education and Health and Human Services, simultaneously, MentalSpace School takes that terrifying liability off the shoulders of the local principal.
And that administrative shield becomes even more vital when you look at the next line in the brief. It mentions that they provide HB 268 compliance support, and it notes a looming deadline, July 2026.
Yeah, that specific detail reveals the intense pressure school districts are currently operating under. HB 268 is a piece of state legislation.
What exactly does a mandate like that demand of a school?
Well, state legislatures frequently pass bills requiring public schools to implement specific mental health protocols, threat assessments, or crisis intervention frameworks. It's to combat the youth mental health crisis.
Okay, that sounds like a good thing on paper.
On paper, yes. They set a hard deadline like July 2026 by which every district must be legally compliant. But here's the catch. They rarely give the schools a fully built, funded system to achieve it.
Oh, wow. So they just hand down an unfunded mandate, basically saying, figure out how to become a mental health triage center by 2026, or you're breaking the law.
Yes, exactly. So superintendents and school boards are just panicking. They don't have the budget to hire 50 new full-time clinical psychologists.
Right.
And they certainly don't have the legal expertise to build a dual-compliant FERPA and FERPA data system from scratch.
So MentalSpace School isn't just selling therapy to kids. They are selling administrative survival to school districts.
That's a great way to put it.
They are offering a plug-and-play system that basically says, we will handle the clinical liability, the insurance billing, and the data privacy, and we will guarantee you hit that legislative mandate safely.
It solves the operational crisis for the district administrators, which ultimately frees up the actual educators to focus back on teaching.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We've looked at the clinical mechanisms, like how cultural competence builds rapid trust.
Right.
We've looked at the financial engineering, making Medicaid work alongside commercial insurance, and we've looked at how they shield the schools legally.
The whole package.
But the ultimate question is, does treating the environment actually fix the core academic issues?
The ROI, essentially.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and the source provides 3 hard data points for their outcomes. 85% family satisfaction, 92% reduced anxiety, and 89% improved attendance.
In the context of educational data, those are staggering figures, particularly the relationship between the anxiety reduction and the attendance improvement.
That's exactly the link that fascinated me. We constantly hear school boards agonizing over chronic absenteeism. Kids just aren't showing up to school anymore.
It's a national crisis right now.
And the traditional response to truancy is incredibly punitive. We send warning letters to parents. We assign detentions. We involve truancy officers.
Yeah, we punish them for not being there.
Right. But looking at these numbers, a 92% drop in anxiety correlating with an 89% jump in attendance, is the real cure for chronic absenteeism actually just accessible therapy?
The data strongly suggests that it is. Because chronic absenteeism is rarely about a student simply deciding they don't want to learn math.
So what is it usually about?
Truancy is a behavioral coping mechanism. It is an avoiding strategy for underlying distress.
So if a student is suffering from severe social anxiety or an unmanaged learning disability or even trauma from home.
The physical school building itself starts to feel like a threat.
Wow, okay.
Human beings are hardwired to avoid environments where they feel profoundly unsafe or distressed. That's just biology.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. When you punish that avoidance with a detention or a threatening letter to the parents, you aren't making the school environment feel safer. You are actually increasing the ambient anxiety.
You are pouring gasoline on the fire.
You really are.
Mm-hmm.
But if you implement this systemic intervention, where that student has same-day access to a culturally competent professional who helps them regulate their nervous system,
Then you treat the root cause.
yes, the anxiety drops by 92%. And once the distress is managed, the need for the avoidance behavior just disappears.
Because they don't feel threatened anymore.
Right. The student naturally returns to the classroom, and attendance improves by 89%.
It shifts the entire perspective. We shouldn't be asking, how do we force this kid back into the building? We should be asking, why does this kid feel the need to flee the building in the first place?
And that philosophical shift is what drives the 85% family satisfaction rate. I mean, parents want their children to thrive
And
academically.
of course they do.
When you remove the financial friction, eliminate the administrative wait lists, and actually heal the underlying anxiety, the family unit stabilizes, and the student's academic potential is unlocked.
It is a truly remarkable blueprint. For any of you listening who are currently dealing with these fragmented systems, whether you're a parent stuck on a 6-month wait list or an administrator staring down that 2026 compliance deadline, the source text wraps up with direct contact avenues.
Yeah, they make it very easy to reach out.
They do. They list their website, mentalspaceschool.com, and their email, mentalspaceschool@sheetsheettherapy.com, with the explicit advice to talk to your school about partnering.
It serves as a very practical case study for how a community can advocate for better infrastructure.
It provides a tangible alternative to the status quo. The blueprint exists, it's just a matter of implementation. Well, I want to thank you, the listener, for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thanks for listening.
We've navigated everything from the psychological mechanisms of telehealth to the legal clashes between healthcare and education.
The mechanics of how this works are definitely complex, but the implications are profound. And this raises an important question for you to mull over as we wrap up.
Leave us with something to think about.
If a systemic model like this seamlessly fuses $0 medical care, family counseling, and educational data all under one school roof, what does the future of the school day actually look like?
Oh, that's a great question.
As we move forward, are our schools evolving past purely academic institutions and becoming the primary healthcare and community wellness hubs of the next generation?
It really makes you rethink what a school is truly responsible for, because if the infrastructure can heal you while it educates you, that changes the trajectory of an entire generation. Thanks again for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.